دكتور سيد ابتدي. مساء الخير. Good evening everybody. I'm Ahmed Ghoneim, the CEO of National Museum of Egyptian Civilization, NMEC. That's a short name for it. And before starting, I would like to thank, first of all, Dr. Said and the Federation of Egyptian Industries for hosting this session about NMEC and NMEC turning green. And definitely I would like to thank as well Ms. Rawia Mansour and Ms. Shireen Badr for attending and all other people attending. Now, I'll be very brief and be talking about what's the idea of a museum turning green and how can a museum turn green, which is for some people looks a little bit odd in the sense of what's the relationship between a museum and the issue of turning green. So just a brief intro. I will give a brief presentation, and then there will be a short movie which is a little bit different from the one that's displayed outside. It's a little bit longer. So that's the antiquities part of it so far, that we have a main exhibition hall which contains about 1,600 pieces. And there is the Royal Mummies Hall, which has 20 kings and queens that most Egyptians and as well non-Egyptians know about them. They are displayed in a special way that makes you feel that you're in a grave with their belongings. And finally, there is the Egyptian Textile Hall, which exhibits around 400 to 600 pieces related to textiles. And then that's what we call behind the scenes. We have the conservation and restoration labs, and we're among the first museums that we opened this place for visits, but they need to be with a special permit from the administration. And this area contains passion as well as talent as well as science. So it's a beauty, and we have one of the very advanced technologies used in this regard all over the world. We have some equipments that are only there in the Louvre in Paris and Abu Dhabi. And we have, of course, as well, storage, which has around 35,000 pieces. What do we believe in? And that's what we're doing in that the sense. Our slogan is that we're more than just a museum. We believe that the idea of visiting a museum in the traditional old way, where you see only antiquities displayed, is not enough. So we decided to add things that make the visit more vivid and more life to any visitor who comes to us. Among such issues is the use of a lot of technology. And we use a lot of technology, whether by showing films or interactive screens or QR codes and so on and so forth in the Mummies Hall or in the exhibition halls in general. Adding to that, we're trying to move the place to be one of the cultural hubs in Egypt. So in this regard, we have been making a lot of cultural activities, and the idea is to link the old heritage of Egypt with what we have in terms of culture and traditions and the new heritage that we have and the current heritage that we have. So we host a lot of events that's related to music or music singing concerts or live music and so on and so forth. We have a lot of lectures, and actually the one that says it's a lecture that was in the opening of the World Art Forum, where Ms. Rawia Mansour was involved as well as Shireen Badr, but unfortunately she had a flu at that day and Shireen was not sitting, but she's probably, you can see her back here, and we have a lot of public lectures and distinguished lectures in this regard. We have a lot of art exhibitions as well. We had 3. The latest was just opened 3 days ago, where we had it with the University of Helwan University about, again, recycling and doing a lot of stuff related to recycling. And we have a number of workshops that we provide in things related to whether recycling or educating kids about arts and culture. And this is related to climate change, where we'll come to later. Now, here comes the main issue. Where can and how can NMEC go green? When I say about NMEC going green, a lot of people think that we will use solar energy. And unfortunately, the answer is no. I cannot use solar energy, despite that I am a very large consumer of electricity. And this is because simply the architecture of the museum. If I use solar energy, then I will destroy the architecture and the general view of the museum, and hence I cannot use, in that sense, solar energy. But there are other means which allow me to go green as a museum. So where we stand, the first point we started, and maybe we're the first museum, I would say, in the region that have decided to move in this regard, and we adopted this track, is that we issued already and published, and it's available on our website as well as on our Facebook and other social media, the carbon footprint report. So we did this, and that's the starting point, the starting pillar of designing where we will go. So we were able to identify our carbon dioxide emissions in this regard as a museum based on the number of visitors and the number of vehicles that are used in the museum. And then those are small options that complement the strategy that already is published as well, and we're in the process of having it uploaded on our social media. So, for example, we use segregated bins, which is something not very common in Egypt to use. If you come to us, you'll find that we ration the usage of water as well as electricity as much as we can. The problem is with the electricity consumption, I would say it is extremely high, and this is for certain reason, which is the preservation of the monuments that we have and the antiquities. We cannot easily reduce our consumption. But as workers in the museum, we decided that we adopt a strategy that we reduce as much as we can. But for antiquities, we cannot do this. Adding to that, in terms of our strategy for climate change, we educate children and we educate youth how to preserve climate. And in this regard, we don't educate them in the general or the traditional way, but we use workshops, and this is a photo of one of the workshops that we had, teaching them how to use recyclable stuff, introducing art. So it's not only exhibitions for well-known people like Shireen and Randa, but we actually educate the youth how to make use of the garbage, the waste into producing art, how to preserve climate in this regard. And we believe that we as a museum, as a cultural hub, we have a great role in this regard. And actually, my colleague Taha is here with me, is involved in this idea of going green. So I thank him for being with us today. Adding to that, there are other following steps, and this is all displayed in our strategy. For example, we're having stations that's in the pipeline, but it takes time for contractual issues of electrical charges for cars, again, coping with the future. Digitalization of paperwork is in the process, and we're adopting this. And the recyclable exhibition tools. So actually, again, the idea of recycling we're being obsessed with it, and we're trying as much as possible to have it used in the museum. Go ahead. Linking climate change and sustainability is not an easy process. So we try to find and locate ourselves with SDGs, and that's a very simple let's say, slide that shows that we are related more or less to at least 6 of the main 17 goals of SDGs. So for example, the gender equity, we have the percentage of women higher working in the museum than men. We have this idea of quality education. And again, when I talk about quality education, I'm not talking about the normal traditional education, but I'm talking about how we educate youth and children in an interactive way. We actually the idea of climate action and how we decided with this strategy that we're adopting to move green. So for example, we're intending to issue, this are just some kind of things that we're intending to do, what we call a green ticket. And a green ticket is something voluntary that you can buy. And with its money, we're intending to plant trees, whether in the museum or outside the museum. So that's among the ideas that we're trying to push forward in order to make the museum as a green museum. Partnerships, we have a lot of partnerships with a lot of NGOs and a lot of global and regional partners, whether in terms of culture or in terms of antiquities or in terms of preserving climate. So this is an idea of how a museum, which for many people would think that we're completely far from what's happening in the climate change agenda and SDGs, but we are there and we are trying to cope with it. Please. The final one is aligning with Egypt's Vision 2030. And in this regard, I won't go in the details, but what we're all doing helps us to move further in order to be aligned with Egypt Vision 2030, whether when we talk about education or whether we talk about environment, whether we talk about economic sustainability. The final, those are the pillars that we're working on. And we started by having some sort of sessions, capacity building sessions, in order to get the idea of climate change in all the strategy in a top-bottom approach, and have the idea of climate change in the DNA of how the museum works. So this will be adopted in every strategy, in every department that's adopting anything related to climate change. By having this ensures that the idea of climate change is not far from the employees. The idea of climate change is not far from the strategy or the different departments that we're having. The last slide that I'm going to show is the timeline implementation of this strategy. We started in 2022 by having this footprint report, and we adopted already and we issued the strategy. And this is our timeline, to be realistic, that by 2030 we'll be fully a green museum, inshallah. I hope I did not prolong too much, and if you allow me, I'll show you a 5 minutes video, and that's it for this session. Thank you. Just to have a glimpse of what we do in the museum.
C'est l'histoire d'un amour éternel et banal qui apporte chaque jour tout le bien, tout le mal avec la
حس بس بالحياة، شيل من قلبك أيام، وفي كل ناحية واتجاه عادي املى الدنيا راس.
So this was a short virtual tour of what we do across time. And I just explained in the presentation how, as a museum, we're turning green. And I hope that you enjoyed it, at least enjoyed the tour. And if any questions, I'm there. If not, then thank you for attending.